So welcome back to the channel. So today's a little bit different than my normal gameplay that I actually do here. So I've actually decided that I wanted to go and create a tier list and go through the entire Resident Evil collection, all the way from 1 to 8, and hopefully introduce what I know and what I believe will happen with RE9. Now we're only quite a few weeks away from RE9, so I thought it'd be a great idea to create this list. So what I've got in front of me is the list here on screen that we've actually kind of made originally. So we've got all the way from the S tier all the way to the D tier. Now, obviously, the S tier is going to be the good tier, and obviously the D is going to be either the worst or something that I wouldn't recommend. So I'm going to keep this quite a short video. I don't want it to be a lengthy, in-depth video of each game and what that game kind of represents to me. But yeah, straight off the bat, let's start with Resident Evil 1. So the game that actually kind of made the entire collection, or the start of a franchise. So in my eyes, this one can only go in the S tier. Um, Reason why is because, yeah, it created the franchise. This is the remastered version, by the way. So I'm not actually looking at it as a kind of the older version. We're only going in the remaster, so you know, with the mechanics like how it opens a door, um, yeah, and some of the sort of tank controls, it makes the game even more scary. So it's something that I would highly recommend people actually play. So that's Resident Evil 1. Now, Resident Evil 2, the one with Leon and Claire, the remastered version. So that was actually played on the PS4 for me. So for me, once again, it has to go into the S tier. And the reason why it's because the remaster is stunning. Graphically, it is on par with, some of the best games that I've ever played. And I think if you was going to play a Resident Evil game, one that I personally would recommend is Resident Evil 2. Out of the entire thing, it's got to be RE2. One thing that has kind of put me off kind of playing on this channel is dealing with Mr. X. I hate the idea that something, again, follows me, and it's just one of these features in this game that makes this game super, super terrifying. So, if we're going to look at Resident Evil 3 with Nemesis, even though I know that Nemesis is a stronger character than Mr. X, I still don't think it's an as polished game as Resident Evil 2. I know that from my personal experience, actually, in speaking to the community, a lot of people love RE2 more than Resident Evil 3. Um, so in that case, it's gonna have to go in A tier. Um, I love the game. Graphically, it is stunning. The only thing that kind of puts me off with this game is how quick it is. Um, I mean, to be honest, it probably could go into B. Um, so B or A. I think I'm probably going to leave. Do you know what? I'm going to leave it in B. Reason why, because I know what game's actually going to follow. So it makes more sense to actually put um, Resident Evil 3 in the B column. So the next one is going to be Resident Evil 4. Now, we are talking about the remastered version. So that I actually played on the PS5. Um, Again, another game which is absolutely terrifying to play. It's a longer game than Resident Evil 3. And I think it's kind of the same length as Resident Evil 2, I believe, but I could be wrong. Um, one of the one of the scenes that actually stands out for me is the church scene. The way you actually have to just survive. That is another mechanic, another element that the Resident Evil franchise does really, really well. So, in my eyes, it can only go into the A section. Now, it isn't as good as Resident Evil 2, and it didn't obviously start the franchise, which is why it cannot be Resident Evil 1. But the A option is definitely better than RE3, but the A section is where I personally believe where it should be belonging. Now, when we actually talk about Resident Evil 5, now, for me, this is very, very subjective, but for me, it is the worst game that Resident Evil actually has played. It introduces, obviously, the co op option. And I believe you kind of play you or the co-op is Claire. I could be wrong, but I know that you play as Chris throughout this game instead of kind of always playing as Leon. Um, Graphically, obviously, it hasn't been remastered, which is why I'm probably a little bit subjective. But the thing that really, really bothers me throughout this game, it's the constant, you know, over here language that Chris is using to Claire. I can't play it. I've played it before. I can't play it again until it probably gets remastered. But for me, it's probably the worst Resident Evil game that has been played. So in that case, I'm gonna have to put it in the D section. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of where it belongs. That's kind of where it sits. If someone said to me that I wanted to play a Resident Evil game, that's the one that I cannot recommend. Definitely go for RE1 or RE2, but yeah, five's definitely not in that category. Now, when it comes to Resident Evil 6, it's a superior game. It's introducing new mechanics. You do play as Leon. I'm really, really hoping that they remaster number six because I really enjoyed it. Um, but the only problem that you have with it is when you start comparing it against RE3 and Resident Evil 4, the only place I can actually put it is in C. Not because it's a bad game. I really hope that they remaster it, like what I said. But yeah, I can't put it anywhere higher than C. You may disagree, but for my personal list, I cannot put it above C. Now, when it comes to franchising and what people think the RE franchise belongs. Now, as I said, Resident Evil 1 started this franchise. Uh, r- Kind of Resident Evil 2 kind of reintroduced a remastering scheme. But when it comes to introducing characters, um, RE7. It's the one that kind of pushed this franchise back into the limelight. Obviously, you play as a new character called Ethan. So you don't actually, I mean, you get introduced to Chris later on, but Leon's nowhere to be seen. Um, if I'm going to put it, see, it's a hard one because I don't know whether to put it in S tier or A tier. I think I'm going to probably put it in S tier. And the reason why I'm going to put it in S tier, I believe I actually spoke to a family member and they haven't actually played any Resident Evil games. And I think the one that I recommended was RE7, solely because it's a more friendlier game, because you're kind of obviously seeing through the eyes of the character, rather than, the iconic over the head shoulder kind of look. Um, yeah, I think I'd put it in S tier. I think when it comes now to orders. Yeah, I think, do you know what? I'm happy with that. I think I'm happy with RE1 first, then 2, and then 7. Now we're actually looking at RE8, so Village. I think I would actually put Village in A tier. Um, yeah, I think that's probably the better option I'd put in. I'm just trying to think because it's a difficult one. Reason why it's difficult because RE4 is such a great game. But it's the over the head shoulder, which I think does it for a lot of people. I think people love this new idea of seeing through the eyes of the character. Now, the big one that I'm interested in kind of getting people's opinions on it is RE9. Now, we're only obviously a few weeks away, which is why I'm actually doing this video of kind of a tier list. I think from what I've seen, and it brings back Leon. For me, yeah, it's got to go into S tier. Um, I'm hoping it's what people believe, but looking at gameplay, looking at everything in it, yeah, I think it's gonna be S tier. One of the things that I think will be interesting in the game is you have two perceptions. You could do it over the shoulder, or you can do it within the eyes of the character. Now, for me, if Leon dies in this game, I'm going to be pushing this down to A tier for me, just because, yeah, my attachment to Leon and the franchise itself. But again, that is my tier list. I think for me, for S tier, yeah, do you know what? I actually really like the order. I think RE1's the best one out of everything. It's the one that I would always personally recommend. RE2 is great because it's been remastered and it looks absolutely stunning. Number seven is the one where it introduces the franchise again in a new kind of way, a new variant, and through the eyes of the character. And RE9 is obviously the people's expectations. Um, A for the A tier, Resident Evil 4 because it's been remastered, but it is a long game. And I don't love the story as much as the previous ones. So I think 80 is great. Village I loved. I think maybe if I'm a little bit more subjective, I'd probably put Village in front of RE4. Um, Section B or B tier, Resident Evil 3. The reason why, again, it's a stunning looking game, but for me, the story's a little bit too short. I know a lot of people in the community feel the same way, which is why I think it belongs in B. RE6 in C tier. The reason why it's in C tier, it's a great game, great mechanics, but it just needs to be remastered. D, it's definitely Resident Evil 5. It's probably one of the worst games that I've actually played visually, but also mechanically. And yeah, I don't really enjoy the story. So I think that's my tier list. Now, I know I actually have missed a few, like Veronica and Zero and Outbreak and all these things, but I just wanted to go through Resident Evil 1 all the way to expectations of 9. So that's my tier list. If you do like the tier list, feel free, leave it a like, but put it in the comments. What do you think is kind of your favorite from the Resident Evil franchise? I mean, that's how I would actually see it. I wouldn't argue and say it's set in stone, but I'm happy with it. So if you like the video, feel free, leave it a like, subscribe, and I will be playing RE9 on the channel. So I'll catch you later.